Hey everyone, we're going to start in about 2 minutes. So if you've got any sound issues, go ahead and let me know via Facebook or text message or whatever else you've got, and I will make adjustments as necessary. I got information that we're not lagging, so that's awesome. So I just got a question about being able to type in questions. Google Hangouts has an application where you can turn on Q&A, and then a little sidebar will show up where you can type a question and I will see it and then I can talk to it. From my interface, let's see, if I go all the way over to the left of my screen, a little invisible bar pops up, and then there's this blue window that says Q&A with like in a little conversation box. So if that works for you, fantastic. If not, maybe Google itself can provide an answer. Okay, and with that, we are at 4:30 Pacific time. I'm in the Eastern time zone, so it's 7:30 my time. And let's go ahead and begin. So my name is Melissa Hemphill. I'm the regional affiliate of BIRTHFIT Florida. I live in the panhandle of Florida. I really wish I could get more towards the Miami, Tampa, Orlando type of girls. There's such a need for BIRTHFIT really everywhere. But I'm very much present to the need in Florida especially. So with that, I just would really like to frame this whole webinar just to put it in context and to let you know my intention and my commitment to you. So first and foremost, here I am presenting about eating psychology, and I just want to be very clear that I'm bound by the same human nature that you are. And I do not have a perfect relationship with food, but I do have a practice. And within the practice that I have, I'm extremely committed that you become present to yourself in your relationship with food in such a way that you experience transformation. So with that, if there is absolutely anything that I say that is not clear and empowering for you, I will make myself 100% available to discuss this, to support you, absolutely whatever you need. I'm extremely committed to your presence, to you in the relationship, not just what you're eating, but who you are as an eater. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into content. So as you saw in the initial little description, women are the primary nourishers. And because of that, we have a very special and complicated relationship to food. So pregnancy and breastfeeding are the ultimate states of nourishment. You are literally, your body is literally nourishing another human being, you know, in utero, and then also in the postpartum phase during breastfeeding. And to the infant brain, you as the mother and you as the food, as the milk, as the nutrients that are coming through your placenta, and you as love is all one experience. And to the infant brain and their frontal lobe that's not developed yet, it is one, and it stays as one, and it lives in our cells, in all of us, both men and women, for the rest of our lives. So this actually plays out in a lot of the biases and the stereotypes that we have in our culture and just society, where when a woman is seen as anything other than nurturing, it's actually considered like threatening in some way. So you see women in the workforce who are extremely ambitious and successful, and for whatever reason, that can't possibly be nourishing. And so they're talked bad about, and people don't trust them. And, you know, this is the real thing. So what I would, as a pregnant and postpartum woman, you being love, you being food, you being a mother, it presents this beautiful stage for discovering a level of compassion for yourself and for your child that most women don't really know that they didn't know they had that. And that's truly amazing. So, all right, you are the primary nourisher. All right, symptoms and unwanted eating behaviors. So many people consider symptoms as the problem, but in fact, symptoms are not the problem. Symptoms are the body's solution. It's usually the body's best effort to heal itself. So in the context of eating psychology, let's go ahead and look at symptoms as a divine message, symptoms as a cure. It's the body's way for maintaining homeostasis. So what's super fascinating is that like your body is constantly seeking balance, right? And if there's something not right, it will correct itself, or it will attempt to correct itself. And a lot of the times this presents as a symptom. So let's go ahead and dive into an example. For one, if you're feeling the need to numb out, some people will seek out alcohol. If you're feeling the need to be grounded, people will maybe look at a hot and heavy meal, something that's full of starchy carbs. If you're needing to feel stimulated, people will reach for sugar and caffeine. So having an addiction to sugar, having an addiction to alcohol, having an addiction to caffeine is perhaps an unwanted eating behavior for you, but it's the body's effort to heal itself, right? Because it's correcting for an emotional imbalance or an emotional extreme, perhaps. So the key here is to really replace the judgment around the symptoms with curiosity. We are really fascinating creatures. We like to find meaning and make stories out of absolutely everything. And this is not something that you think you do. It's something that you automatically do, and you do it all of the time, and you'll never be able to stop, because we are humans and we make meaning and we make stories around everything. What's interesting about symptoms of unwanted eating behaviors is that almost all of the meanings associated with these are negative, and they deflate your power and they deflate your self-expression, when in fact there's really nothing inherently wrong with them. So having, getting a little pick-me-up by some sugar and caffeine, having a drink, you know, enjoying some sugar every once in a while. It's the behavior itself is not good or bad. You know, we assign the meaning to it. But if it's having an unwanted effect on your life, if it's not serving you, then that's a fabulous opportunity to get curious about it and start saying, okay, so there's the behavior, but what's truly what's the symptom pointing to? Because beating yourself up over the behavior is only going to lead to self-abuse. But truly finding and getting curious about what's causing the symptom is really where the gold's at, and that's where you affect change. All right. So we do this thing called moralizing food, and it's super fascinating because we moralize absolutely everything, right? Because we tell stories about everything. But food is the only life-sustaining force that we do this to. So think about moralizing sleep, or think about moralizing breathing. Like, you don't hear about this because we decide they're all good things because we need them to live. But with food that we need to live, we decide to moralize it. So we label certain foods as good foods. And if I eat this good food, I'm a good person. And I label this food as a bad food. And if I eat this bad food, I'm a bad person. This was something I absolutely loved to do before I started learning about eating psychology. Some of my favorite love to hates was high fructose corn syrup. I was like, there is absolutely nothing good about high fructose corn syrup, and or absolutely nothing good about you know, sugar, or absolutely nothing good about hydrogenated oils. And the fact of the matter is that it's neutral. It's just food. And for a person who is starving to death and has absolutely nothing, some of that food that causes them to stay alive a little bit longer and keeps them, you know, in a way nourished for a little bit longer, like, that wasn't a bad thing. So the context is also one of those things that adds to our meanings, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay. Actually, we can just go ahead and talk about this now. So context. One of the things, just to illustrate, you know, how we make stories within the realm of context. Imagine that I'm holding up one finger, right? So in the context of numbers, I have 1. In the context of direction, I have up. In the context of a body part, I have a finger, right? So my meaning around what it is changes based on the context. So this is the same thing about, you know, starting to identify how we make these stories around our food. And another example is, it's not the context, but it's also the dose makes the the dose makes the poison. So of course, food is neither good nor bad because it just is. But second of all, it's how you use it and how much of it that you use that can, you know, move it from serving you to not serving you very quickly. So let's go ahead and use an analogy. You know, you've got a knife, and the knife is neither morally good nor morally bad. It depends upon how you use it. So a chef who makes a knife or uses his knife to make a beautiful meal, very lovingly prepared and enjoyed with their family, you would say that's good. But a person who takes the knife to commit a crime, you would say, nope, the knife is bad in that context, right? So same thing with food. It depends upon how you use it, right? So if you're using alcohol to numb out or to avoid feeling, or to, you know, to reach a state where you are avoiding responsibility for your actions, I would say, like, that's probably not going to serve you. But if you're using alcohol as a celebration, you know, with the people that you love, and you've just, you know, accomplished this amazing thing, you know, that we would say that there's a chance that alcohol can serve you in that case. So I would just really invite you to get curious around where you're making your stories, and when your stories serve you or not, or when your choices serve you or not. So, all right. Let's go ahead and go into MindBody Nutrition. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the webinar, and I would really love to present to you some of these dimensions in MindBody Nutrition. So this is the psychophysiological relationship of food in your body and how you relate to food. So the first one and the biggest one, or maybe not the biggest one, but one of the ones that is just super impactful if you can get this, is the stress versus relaxed eating, and how when you are eating in a stress response, the relaxation response, how that completely changes the nutrition profile of a meal without changing the meal itself. Whoops, let's see, I'm going the wrong direction. There we go. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so the stress response, a stressor is any real or imagined threat and the body's response to it. So the experience within your body is that something is going to happen in the next 2 to 4 minutes and your life depends upon it. So it is the, this is the sympathetic nervous system dominance. This is the part of the automatic part of your nervous system that just turns on, right? Like there's some sort of degree to it, but it's either like a light switch, like are you in a stress response or are you in a relaxation response? So with the stress response, the impact of the stress response on your metabolism and on your body in general is presented to you right here. So this is 4 times less blood flow to the gut, which the reason for this is because your blood is needed in your extremities to get away if you need to get away. There's 20,000 times decrease in the enzymatic output. This is what we call metabolic shutdown, when your body's saying, I absolutely do not need to digest this meal right now. I need to save my life. So it's putting its energetic resources other places, and it's not building enzymes. It's not mobilizing them. It's not delivering them to your gut for digestion. It's also a decrease in growth hormone and thyroid hormone, an increase in insulin and cortisol. These 2 hormones signal your body to gain weight and not to build muscle. That's their job. The die-off of healthy gut bacteria, and if you follow the BIRTHFIT community for a while, you understand that your microbiome in your gut is so important for you and also for your baby. Your gut dictates their flora when they're born. It's phenomenal. It also has impaired mitochondrial function. So this is mitochondria are considered the powerhouse of the cell. So this is where you have a lot of the the movement, you know, the major muscle movers within the cells. That's minimized. You have excretion of key minerals and water-soluble vitamins. This one is huge. This is what changes and leads to huge changes, especially in a chronic state of stress, yeah, this is huge for changing your health on a daily basis by making you deficient in many of these B vitamins, including folate and vitamin C. That's big. You, especially as a pregnant postpartum mom, you definitely need to make sure you have these. Also, decreased oxygen uptake. This one's really fascinating. So if you consider metabolism like a fire, right? A fire needs an ignition, it needs a fuel source, and it needs, you know, oxygen. That's what creates a fire. So let's go ahead and call conception your ignition, because at the moment of conception, you start metabolizing. The fire or the fuel being the food, and then of course oxygen. So when you minimize oxygen, you are minimizing metabolism. You also have increased inflammation and oxidative stress, decreased thermic efficiency. This is also what we call calorie burning efficiency, and an increased pain sensitivity. So this one's really interesting. We're going to talk about pleasure later, but you are not only increased your sensitivity to pain because you need to know right now if you're bleeding out, but you also decrease your sensitivity to pleasure. And pleasure is one of those things that we're going to find out is really crucial to metabolism. So at the end of at the end of the day, all of this is to illustrate the fact that you can change the nutritional value of a meal without changing what you're eating. So you could be eating the very best meal in the entire world, and if you are eating under a huge state of stress, you're eating extremely fast, you will not come out, your body as a whole at the end of the day is not going to come out with the same amount of nutrients that you would have otherwise if you were in a relaxation response. So it's super fascinating. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the relaxation response. The relaxation response is where healing happens. So if you go ahead and just think about fitness, growth and adaptation do not happen on the days that you're in the gym. They happen on your rest days, right? Because on rest days, you are able to perform maintenance and repair of tissues. That's where your, quote unquote gains come from. Stimulation tears down, and the rest is really what's building. So if you're going to try and, build a baby, build breast tissue, build breast milk, build, your muscles because you're, postpartum and you're working towards goals like maybe Olympic weightlifting or strongman or like you want to be able to repair yourself. Like that's just part of being fully alive. So in the relaxation response, we have maintenance and repair of tissues. This is also the phase where emotional healing happens. It's where eternal peace happens. It's where wisdom comes from. You don't get wise in the middle of a stress response, unfortunately. You get instinctual. But in relaxation, it's all about wisdom. And also, it's optimal metabolism. The nickname for this response is called rest and digest. So it's very, very aptly named. All right. So what's super interesting about this response is that we have a lot of quote unquote healing strategies or extreme diets that we want to use to work to, to lose weight or to gain health and vitality. But the truth is that any of these healing strategies that create stress is going to be ultimately ineffective. So let's go ahead and call these like your radical diets, maybe like a fruit and vegetable fast, a water fast, a nothing fast, low calorie diets, tasteless diets, intense supplementation, we would call them punishing exercise. And it's not that these are bad, but and they can be very, very powerfully used as tools for a predetermined amount of time. But to use this as or to use these types of diets as a sustained practice, at the end of the day, if it creates stress for you, it's not going to serve you and you're not going to reach your goals. So I told you at the beginning that I was going to offer you strategies. So the best strategy I have for entering into the relaxation response is to take 8 to 10 slow, deep breaths before each meal. This is one of the great ways to flip your light switch back towards relaxation response, back towards parasympathetic system dominance. And, go ahead and activate that side so that your metabolism is optimized, so that your healing and repair is optimized, your internal peace is optimized. Like, how fabulous is that? Okay, so our next dimension, we're going to talk about eating speed. This one, I want to be completely honest with you. This one still is like such a huge practice for me personally, because I'm part of our culture, and our culture is collectively addicted to speed. This one, I've got all kinds of stories as to why I eat fast. Oh, I grew up in a big family, and if you wanted to, get seconds, you had to scarf down your meals so that you could clean your plate and get seconds. But the truth of the matter is I haven't been committed to slowing down, and that's something that I am going to start doing, start living into that. So, all right, so eating fast actually creates a local stress response. So you may not be, have like a stressful circumstance, right? But by nature of eating quickly, your body's like, oh my gosh, this is coming down really, really fast, in really big pieces because, my person is not chewing. and something must be wrong. And so the body clicks into its own stress response that way. And we just learned about all of the effects of a stress response. So what's super interesting about eating speed is that nearly all heartburn cases are a result of eating too fast, and or too much poor quality, or the wrong food combinations. So again, heartburn as a symptom is a solution calling attention to the body, or calling attention to the habit, the unwanted or the problematic habit. Very, very cool. So as a pregnant woman, a lot of you guys are very much aware of heartburn, and definitely a lot of it has to do with physiologic changes in your body, where you actually have physical obstructions or pressures that are causing your valves to kind of open up and go back the other direction. But you know, it helps to understand as well some of the other causes of heartburn. The second thing is that digestive intelligence takes time. It takes about 20 minutes for your body to fully register that it's digested a meal, simply because it's a long trek. You know, your gut and the gut bacteria are the ones that pretty much signal like, hey, we're good, and your stomach and its stretch receptors signal that, hey, that's plenty, or that's enough. And that takes time. And so if you're like me and you eat an entire meal in 2 to 3 minutes, like, you don't give your body time to register. And then on the days where I actually don't have, like, you know, a packed lunch or a packed breakfast, and I just keep eating at that speed. And the next thing I know, like, I'm so incredibly full that I'm like worthless for the rest of the day. So yeah. The first thing to do here is to practice awareness. So mindless eating eliminates our ability to make favorable food choices, experience pleasure, and to feel satisfied. So if you think of the person with a gallon of popcorn, like, if you literally like looked at and ate in a reasonable amount of time, like a piece of popcorn at a time, would you be able to eat an entire gallon of popcorn? Probably not. But you definitely can eat an entire gallon of popcorn when you're sitting in front of a movie and you're not paying attention to the popcorn itself. So practicing awareness and mindfulness in your eating experiences is such a great way to help reduce your eating speed. And then at the end of the day, slowing down eating is such an outrageous request for many people, including myself. I remember someone asked me to take 30 minutes for lunch, and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, there's no way I would have food on my plate after 30 minutes. But it's because we are addicted to speed, and we think busy means sexy and glamorous and important. And that's really not the case. That's just a meaning we assign to it, and it's not serving us. So the strategy I would really like to present here is to take committed action to slowing down. And by doing this, set the table, right? Like that, like make the prep, the eating prep, you know, somewhat ritualistic, where you dim the lights, you're around people that you can have great conversations with. So it encourages you putting your fork down in between bites. Set aside your technology, and that's helping you to stay present to the meal itself and to the people you're with. Play music to help, you know, relax you. And then most importantly, breathe between your bites. I remember so many times where, like, I just shoveled food in my mouth and forgot to breathe. And we talked about oxygen and metabolism and how you need more oxygen to fuel your bigger fire of metabolism. Breathing is, number one, a super great way to increase your metabolism. And then number two, it's a great way to help you slow down. So, all right. Moving on to rhythm. Rhythm is really cool. So rhythm is a universal dimension. There is all kinds of rhythms all around you, including all of the life-sustaining rhythms. So your breathing has a rhythm, your heartbeat has a rhythm, your sleep cycles have rhythms, your menstrual cycles have rhythms, right? You know, it's not just rhythms of time, you know, associated with the moon and or years and months, etc. It's biological rhythms that keep us alive. So metabolism is no different. Metabolism has its own special rhythm. So metabolism rises with the sun. Usually the cortisol is your big signaler that wakes you up and says time for food. Metabolism actually peaks with the sun at high noon, between 12 and about 1:30 p.m. Then there's a dip in body temperature because you've just had your peak metabolic window. And this dip in body temperature occurs between 2 and 4, which everyone knows is the 2 o'clock feeling. So most people, to avoid the 2 o'clock feeling, will reach for some candy, reach for some caffeine to help pick them back up, instead of honoring that dip and truly sitting and resting, or sleeping, better yet. But our culture does not honor siestas, unfortunately. So there's a secondary rise in metabolism, and that's between the hours of 5 and 8 p.m. Although I'd like you to note that this is not as high as your noon temperature, this is also pretty interesting because for a lot of us, dinner ends up being our biggest meal of the day. You know, you rush through breakfast if you have it, maybe it's just coffee, you rush through lunch, you're busy at work, maybe working out during work, and you come home for dinner and it's like actually the first time you're sitting down to eat for the day, and it ends up being your biggest meal because you're starving, because your rhythm is off and it's signaling to your body that we need more food. Also, I'd like to point out is that metabolism is lowest between the hours of 1 and 5 a.m. So all of these things are just these are facts of metabolism. And the one thing I would really like to invite for you for this strategy is to try your dinner for lunch and try your lunch for dinner. And then also try honoring your metabolic dips. So try and be as restful, if not sleeping, during your 2 to 4 and also during your 1 to 5 a.m. That's, I think you would have an amazing impact on your, relationship with food if you could tap into its special rhythm. And this is not, everyone is special, but these are pretty much general guidelines. All right. Next, I did it again. I'm sorry. Here we go. Next, we're going to go ahead and talk about toxic nutritional beliefs. These are so fascinating. They seriously light me up. All right. We talked about how we make meanings out of things. These are beliefs that we have some insane meanings about. And I would love to call these to the table and kind of. So, toxic thoughts and beliefs. They drain our personal power, our freedom, our self-expression, and our peace of mind. Like that's the bottom line of it. And some of the biggest ones are here. So we're gonna specifically address all of these, but just to go ahead and name them first. The first one is that dietary fat is bad, and fat makes me fat. And the meaning we make about fat is that fat is unlovable, and I will never be happy. So number 2 is that food makes me fat. Food is my enemy. Number 3, the royal road to weight loss must be less food, more exercise. Number 4 is that my diet must be perfect. And this means, or is clearly the only way to have a perfect body, right? Number 5, if only I looked or ate a certain way, then I'd be happy. That's a good one. Number 6, I don't have enough willpower to control my appetite. So in the interest of full disclosure and complete integrity, I have had every single one of these. And I've worked extremely hard recently to help eliminate them from my vocabulary and from my my general beliefs. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So fat in general. So yes, some fats are toxic and some fats are more are favorable to avoid. These are what we call your synthetic and hydrogenated oils, or really any liquid oil heated to a high temperature. So in general, the rule of thumb is that if you're going to cook at high temperatures, because you need to cook white meat, especially like your chicken or pork, that ends up, they typically come with a little bit more microorganisms than your red meat does. So, or at least more of the dangerous ones like salmonella, etc. And so those are the type of meats that you want cooked all the way through before you eat them. In order to do that, you cook them in higher temperatures, you cook them longer, etc. And the rule of thumb is to cook these in, oils or fats that are solid at room temperature, not liquid. Because when you heat a liquid oil to high temperature, you actually oxidize this oil, which creates free radicals, and which is a known carcinogen. And again, not that these are inherently bad. The dose makes the poison. When you have fried foods all the time, it's probably not going to serve you in the long run. But enjoying a fried food every now and again, because it brings you pleasure, because it nourishes you, you know what? Why not? All right, let's go ahead and talk about your essential fatty acids. So this is the meat and potatoes around this belief around toxic, around the fact that the belief that fats are toxic and or toxic to your body, and that you should avoid all fats, a fat-free diet. I know my mom is still on a fat-free diet. And we'll go ahead and talk about essential fatty acid deficiency, and she has every single one of these symptoms. And I used to have them too because I had a no-fat diet. All right, so an essential fatty acid is needed for life. That's why it's essential. Your brain is comprised mostly of fat, and so you have people who have low-fat diets, they tend to have decreased plasticity, which plasticity is your brain's ability to adapt and create new pathways and to learn new things. So imagine not being able to learn new things, and also to recall learned things. That's also something that's not good about denying your brain fat. And then the second thing is that every cell in your body has this thing called a lipid cellular membrane. And we often, if we're talking about a cell, we often think that the membrane is like the skin. And, this nucleus thing that protects, our genetics and our chromosomes and all of our DNA, but that's more like the brain. But the reality is the cell membrane is actually considered the brain, because the cell membrane is our cell's interface with the world. And at this interface, it signals our genetic expression to our nucleus, saying, hey, go ahead and express this one, not this one. And by this one, I mean genes. So express this gene over this gene because this is the environment that we're in. That is huge. That is so, so huge. And if you are on a low-fat, no-fat diet, and this membrane that's considered the brain of all of your cells can't function properly, like what is being signaled to your genetics? You have wonky signals happening, maybe inaccurate or misunderstood. And your genetic expression for your environment is not going to be favorable at all. So this is just super, super fascinating. Another thing that essential fatty acids do is they are the building blocks for hormones, and they are the building blocks for eicosanoids. And an eicosanoid is a signaling molecule that provides a complex control over many bodily systems. And there's also the fatty acids are needed to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and E. Also essential for life, hence their name. So natural sources of BFAs, your coconut oils, your butter, olive oil, animal fats, primrose oil are good. Some people who need to step into a little bit more fat in their diet will prefer to take an EFA supplement. There's a number of them. I would just err on the side of higher quality. All right, and so let's go ahead and talk about the no-fat, low-fat diet. And these are the symptoms of clinical and subclinical essential fatty acid deficiency. So dry skin, brittle hair and nails, loss of memory, low mood, depression, irritability, poor digestion and absorption, inflammation, constipation, and chronic coldness. So a lot of people are walking around with these symptoms, and they're walking around terrified of fat, and they either have never connected the dots, or they don't want to, or their belief is so strong that it prevents them from making the necessary dietary changes to improve these symptoms. So again, right, like these symptoms are not the problem. These symptoms are your body's best effort at staying alive under the low-fat, no-fat environment. So, all right. So let's go ahead and talk about the second one. Food makes me fat and food is my enemy. This one would be pretty simple to knock out because this one hones in on the stress response. But when the enemy is food and you eat food a number of times a day, you are in what we call a chronic state of stress. So the stress response is fabulous for being used in high stakes situations and occasionally. Otherwise, especially at meals where we want to be in rest and digest, if you're in a chronic state of stress, this cannot do anything except for take away from your health and vitality. So what this chronic state of stress is doing is signaling to the body to store fat, to not build muscle, to disable digestion, and to excrete key nutrients. This is one of those beliefs that's the self-fulfilling toxic belief. So you're afraid that fat's going to make you fat, and by bringing this belief with you to the table and entering into a chronic state of stress every time you eat, you will probably experience non-caloric weight gain, which is also known as, weight gain under the stress response. So this is super fascinating. All right, and a lot of the times this one will present in a person as someone fighting their appetite. So if you feel like you're a person that's afraid of their appetite or afraid of eating if you actually let yourself eat, you might be holding on to this belief at the core of it. So the third one, this royal road to weight loss, less food and more exercise. Everyone knows it, right? So let's talk about this one. This one's super fascinating. 96% of people who lose weight on a calorie restriction diet gain it back in less than 1 year, and 99% gain it back in less than 2 years. What I like to focus on from this statistic is what's happening to the other 1%. And what's really interesting is that this 1% discovered a new possibility of being fully empowered and self-expressed, and they began taking actions into this possibility. And literally by being in that possibility, they were able to start seeing the results of having a healthier body and a healthier lifestyle. So long story short, their story changed. That's why they lost the weight. It really wasn't about the calorie restriction of the diet itself, because as we understand, diets are actually pretty far from effective in the long term for sustainment. So if this simple equation was the answer, if more exercise and less food, if that was the answer, it would have worked by now. And it would have worked for everyone. But what we're seeing in the statistics is that it hasn't and it won't. And the biggest reason why is for the text right here, that humans are not input-output machines. We're multidimensional and spiritual beings. So just like with the beliefs that are creating metabolic shifts in our body, we know now that it's not simply about what you're eating. It's about who you are as an eater. And also, a lot of people like to say, well, I could follow this, I just don't. I have a willpower problem. So we're going to go ahead and discuss willpower in a different belief, but this ends up coming up too. It's like, well, if I could only stick to this formula, then it would work, but I can't stick to this formula because of my willpower problem. So that's really the issue. So we'll talk about that one in a second. And then also, one thing I would like to point out is that while some people do benefit from this, this is not the entire answer. So if it's not an addition problem, that's not how we, increase our aliveness. And then second, I would like to also bring back this symptoms as the healing, not as the problem. Weight has a perfectly good reason to stay on a person or to come on a person. They are surviving. So we see this a lot in people who have really traumatic life experiences. Maybe it's sexual abuse, maybe it's, coming close to death, and they feel the need to protect. And so their body gets bigger and they feel more protected. You see people try, it can also go the other way, where if you're, kind of like a big, strong person, you want to make yourself a smaller target. Some people can't stop losing weight and they just keep losing weight. And that's their body's survival mechanism. And that's not an equation. That's meaning, that's reaction, that's survival. So weight will stay on a person until it has a reason to come off. And the reasons are in our stories. All right, let's talk about perfection. This is so great. Okay, so the toxic belief is that my diet must be perfect because, of course, a perfect diet leads to a perfect body. So I want to talk about perfectionism. This has only become present to me recently. I am absolutely a perfectionist at heart. It's a fixed way of being that has a payoff and it has a cost. And I've only become aware of the cost recently, to the point where I'm not willing to pay that price anymore. And I'm going to live into a possibility where I can change that fixed way of being. So with perfectionism, it's a distraction, right? It's my way of being right, right? It's my way of being liked. It's my way of avoiding responsibility for my femininity. It's my way of winning, because perfect wins. And the cost that it has, that I've only recently become aware of, is that it's stealing, it's draining my personal power, because I'm not perfect and I will never be perfect. But I think that I can if I just try a little bit harder, especially around food. So if only, I ate exactly this amount of macros, if I just waited every day, and if I just, did all of this, everything would be perfect. But yeah, I might have the body that I want, but I will be so terrified of losing it that there's absolutely going to be no being in the enjoyment of it. And a lot of people find this. A lot of people who kind of control and perfect everything up to get what they want, they don't actually enjoy what they have, because that's not the path they took. They took a road of self-hate and self-abuse, and they expected it to arrive at a destination of love and acceptance and vitality. And what I've come to understand is that the destination begets the journey, and that the journey begets the destination, that it's all one the same. It's not about, it's about being what you want to have what you want, not having what you want just to be what you want. We're doing it totally backwards, and we wonder what the problem is. We just might not we're not doing it better, right? So the strategy I have for you here is to investigate your payoff and your cost. And a big hint that I'll give you is that the payoff always revolves around avoiding responsibility, and that the cost always revolves around being fully alive. And reflect on your cost, and if that's a price you're willing to pay, and if that way of being and living in an unfulfilled and disempowered life, if that's something that you actually want. So yes, with perfection, it's just a sieve and a distraction, and it gives us permission to stay small. And I want for you the biggest and the best and all of the possibilities. And that's why I'm bringing this concept to the table, so that we can break through and become the biggest and best and most fulfilled versions of ourselves in the BIRTHFIT community. All right, if only I looked or ate a certain way, then I'd be happy. So we kind of briefly talked about this doing it backwards. We want to have so that we can be. But what I'd like to propose to you today is that we do it the right way. So we live into a future of being a certain way. I want to live into a future of being healthy and strong, right? And within that future, in order to be that, I'm going to start taking committed action within that possibility. So I will be taking actions under a committed and strong and healthy way of being. And the more you do that, you will finally start experiencing the having of healthy and strong, which is super amazing. A lot of times we put happiness outside of now, and happiness and any feeling really can only be felt in the present, because life happens now in the present. And we don't just do this with food, right? We say, I mean, like we said before, so it's not about just your food and your body, but it's about everything, right? Like, if only once I get the degree, I'll be happy. Once I, leave this marriage, I'll be happy. Once I do this, I'll be happy. And we don't just do it with happiness. We do it with all of the things that we want to be, instead of creating what we want to be first and then acting within that, and then finding that we have it by being it. It's kind of mind-blowing for me. So I hope it is for you too. Okay. Going into the final toxic nutritional belief is, if I don't have enough willpower, or I don't have enough willpower to control my appetite. All right, so appetite control is often confused with natural appetite regulation. I wrote a post about this because this was really big on my heart. Appetite's not a willpower problem. It tells us we're alive. It's one of those signals, just like the need to breathe and the tiredness and the need to sleep. That tells us we're alive, and it keeps us going. And if you want to fight appetite, I would invite for you to look within yourself and decide if you're fighting your existence. Because as a signal for living, it kind of tends to the react. That's a big deal. But if we're confusing truly fighting appetite in that sense with natural appetite regulation, time is now to make the distinction. So natural appetite regulation is influenced by so many factors, and I listed 3 here, so I could talk briefly about them. But there's fighting the appetite, and then there's having an appetite that's like totally out of whack as far as its regulation. Rhythm influences natural appetite regulation, macronutrient balance does, and so does food quality. So these are just 3 of many examples that influence it. So with rhythm, like, let's take, for example, skipping breakfast, right? You have your coffee, your black coffee in the morning, you have like a very small salad or whatever at lunchtime, and by the end of the day, your appetite is quote unquote out of control. And it's like, well, of course, right? You've been starving it all day because the rhythm has been totally off. You've had small, infrequent meals, and maybe perhaps poorly timed around your, if you ate between that metabolic dip between 2 and 4, your appetite is going to upregulate. Also with macronutrient balance, this one's super fascinating too. So your body doesn't always differentiate between caloric deficiency and nutrient deficiency. So if you're low in fat, if you're low in proteins, if you're low in carbs, your body doesn't always say, I mean, some people are aware of, what macronutrient they're because they have a craving for it. But a lot of the times the body just says more, because chances are when you eat more, you're going to get more of what it's missing. So that's why eating tons and tons of poor quality carbohydrates, your body's going to keep signaling more, because it's looking for more protein and fats, or more vitamins and minerals, because it's not getting it. So food quality, that kind of ties right into food quality too. So if you're eating a lot of poor quality foods, the more the appetite that your appetite is signaling is for all of those key nutrients. So yeah, that one's pretty interesting as well. So the strategy I'd really like to offer here is to try on a commitment of natural appetite regulation and see what happens to your willpower problem. So if you're committed to eating within your rhythms, eating more balanced around your proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. If you're committed to eating nutrient density, I would be very curious to see what happens to the quote-unquote willpower problem, because your appetite will be more naturally regulated, more balanced. All right, so there's our toxic nutritional beliefs. So we're gonna head back over here into our mind-body nutrition dimensions and go ahead and pick up on pleasure. All right, so pleasure gets a bad reputation, right? Like, we have these phrases called sinfully good, guilty pleasure, right? It doesn't have a good meaning for us, you know, because we make meanings and we make stories, and pleasure ends up being one of those bad things, especially around food. Like, oh my gosh, you know, experiencing pleasure while eating, I will never be able to stop. Well, that's only happens when you don't fully experience pleasure. So pleasure is one of those self-fulfilling experiences. Like, if you truly let go and allow yourself to become present to the pleasure of what you're eating, it will be enough. When you withhold and you have a little bit of guilt coming in with your pleasure, that's when your body says, nope, haven't gotten that full pleasure, haven't gotten that full pleasure. And you keep eating the thing that is causing you guilt, and the guilt's causing you diminished pleasure, and all of it's causing diminished metabolism. So it's one of those, you know, vicious cycles. But if you could truly experience pleasure, like experience the nuances and the smells and the sensations and the taste, and allow yourself to enjoy it without any guilt attached, you will find that what it was perfectly enough. Super, super interesting. Pleasure only happens in the relaxation response as well. So very similar to orgasm, right? Like, if you're stressed out, you're not going to have an orgasm. If you're relaxed and fully vulnerable, that's when the good stuff, and that's when it all happens, right? So yes, so if you're in a chronic state of stress and you're going to say, well, I'm going to try and enjoy this piece of chocolate because pleasure is important, go ahead and take your 8 to 10 long, slow, deep breaths and before enjoying it, because bringing yourself into a state where you can enjoy it is key to pleasure. All right, and then finally, I guess to talk about the stress response one more time. Cortisol and fat deficiency. Interesting. My notes are strange right now. Okay, so insulin and cortisol desensitize the body to pleasure. So when this is what I'm talking about. When you have guilt, aka, you know, a little bit of stress within your eating, you are now heightened to pain and desensitized to pleasure. And so you need more of whatever it is in order to experience the same amount of pleasure if you had otherwise been in a relaxation response. So the strategy here is to become present to the pleasure or lack thereof in your life, and give yourself permission. Sometimes people have to like write this down or say it out loud. I give myself permission to fully experience pleasure, and then try to experience it on a regular basis. And I would be very curious about what happened to your metabolism. So one example I would like to use is people who go on vacation and they quote unquote let themselves go, and they just eat all the amazing things that they've been, you know, restricting from themselves, and they maybe like lose weight, they maybe don't gain weight. They're expecting to come back like 20 pounds heavier and they don't. This is what we call relaxation response and pleasure. That's the factors that work here. So it's not about, I believe in 80% of the time eating for your goals, eating in a way that serves you and increases your vitality. And then 20% of the time, life is short and pleasure is important. Pleasure is a key part of metabolism. So enjoy it, right? All right. So, okay, we are gonna go on to nourishment. Nourishment. So unlike nutrition, which is just the breakdown of, you know, the components of the food, it's the calories and the fats and the proteins and the carbs and blah, 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 blah. Nourishment is that which sustains us, right? This is holistic feeding. This is multi-level satiation, very different from nutrition. Nourishment is its own beast, and something that you don't need food to fill. So some examples of things that are very nourishing besides food are people, and your thoughts can be nourishing, your feelings, your hobbies. Oxygen is nourishing, experiences, conversations, music. One of the things that I became present to in this past weekend doing a conference was I was having very fulfilled experiences and conversations with people that I haven't had in a long time. And I noticed that the nourishment I was receiving from not food was not being sought after in food. So when we are nourished, when our soul is nourished, it doesn't even become about finding a symbolic substitute, in food. It doesn't become the numbing out or the stimulation. It's, your soul is fed, and then you eat for your body. And like, that is amazing. Super amazing. So in an unnourishing life, people often turn to food as the substitute. It's easy. We're around it all the time. It gives us an instant, reaction or response to our body. It's convenient. So one of the strategies I'd really like to offer you under nourishment is an inquiry into nourishment. Maybe make like a list of all the things that feed you, and not just the food, right? Like we talked about all of the other aspects besides food, like your conversations and music and your feelings and hobbies. Look into that, and then make an attempt to experience true nourishment each day. And if you can experience true nourishment at every meal, holy cow, I would call that being fully alive. And that's fabulous. So I would love for everyone to have nourishment at every single meal. That would be so amazing. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our next one, which is embodiment. This one is super fascinating, especially for our pregnant and postpartum women. All right, embodiment comes from the fact that we are born from inside one body into another. So you come from your mother's body and you are born into your body. Like, how freaking cool is that? Feelings happen in the body, right? We talked about feelings happen now, but the location of the feelings that we experience are within our bodies. And as infants, we love and accept our bodies exactly how they are. Like I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they both love their bodies, but my 2-year-old little girl, she is in love with her body. She is taking her clothes off all the time, taking her diapers off all the time. She's smacking her tummy. She wants to see everyone else's tummy. She's just so fascinated by everything her little body does. And we have that. We were born with that, and we learn otherwise. So oftentimes when we're unhappy and uncomfortable with our bodies, we make our bodies wrong for it, and we actually start experiencing some body hate. One of the analogies I really love to use when discussing embodiment is the analogy of a car, right? Like if you want to go somewhere, you have to get in your car, right? Just like your body, like you want your body to go somewhere, you want to become stronger, you want to become, have muscle gains, have fat loss, build a baby, like whatever it is, you have to get inside your body first. Like you can't go somewhere in your car unless you get in your car and take it there, right? So a journey of disembodiment, you stay put because you're not in your car, you're not in your body. One of the things we'll talk about in a second, but this idea of choice and choosing, a lot of times we associate choice with having options, right? Like you have, pick a flavor. You can have strawberry or chocolate or vanilla, and make a choice. And you say, oh, I choose vanilla because I like it and I want it and I'm free to choose. Oftentimes, life gives us choices and we don't recognize them as choices because there's one option. And in fact, there's two options and we stick with the one or we resist. So life sometimes says, here's your body, now choose. And we say, no, I don't want this body, and we resist it. And when you resist, it persists. And we keep resisting and we keep resisting, and that's the choice that you make. So I would love for you to choose your body, right? Life said, here's your body, now choose. And when you choose and you make it yours and you take full responsibility, that's the space where you can create from. That's the space where you can take your body to places that you never thought you could, because now you're in it and you're choosing it and it's yours. There's so much power in that, so much power. Okay. All right. Let's see. We're going to go on to the next one. Trying to check my notes here. All right. Macronutrient balance. So macronutrients, these are your proteins, fats, and carbs, and also water is included. And the balance part is the approximate ratios of each of these. So this dimension has broad nutritional influences with lasting effects. What's super interesting is that like all of our fad diets mess with one of these, right? Like you've got Atkins diet, which is pretty much eliminates carbohydrates. You've got, let's see, I wouldn't say paleo eliminates carbohydrates, but sometimes like a vegan diet will eliminate protein, or no, not vegan. I'm sorry, like a raw foods, like just raw fruits and vegetables can eliminate protein. You've got your no-fat, low-fat diets that we already discussed. But at the end of the day, they're not sustainable because they're eliminating one of the essential macronutrients in your body that your body needs to survive and to thrive. So with macronutrients, you can create a fundamental shift in your metabolism and naturally regulate appetite through by bringing all of your macronutrients to the table every time you have a meal. So this is why like the zone diet and what they call flexible dieting, or your macros, finding your macros, eating with your macros, like that's been really effective for a lot of people because it's creating metabolic optimization. So one of the strategies I'd like to offer you is to notice like what do your macronutrients look like in each meal. And I'm not saying to go measure out, find your numbers and all of that, but notice that like, hey, I really only eat proteins and fats, and then on the weekends I binge on carbs because my body's starving for carbs. And what would happen to your binge if you could incorporate some carbohydrates at your meals throughout your week. So there's a lot of power in macronutrient balance that you can totally start playing with. So, okay, getting close here, guys. All right, food quality. Food quality consists of real organic, minimally processed, lovingly prepared, fresh, and local. That's what I would consider your higher quality foods. Food quality is a big one too. So when you increase food quality, what you're doing is you're increasing nutrient density. And we talked about nutrient density being one of those factors in naturally regulating your appetite. So this can only have good effects. And the other fascinating thing about a relationship with food is that the way we do one relationship is the way we do all of our relationships. So if you have a diet of high quality foods, what would be really interesting is looking at like quality in the rest of your life, because I bet you have it. So if you want this possibility of having a high quality life, start dreaming into it and taking actions from that place where you begin with increasing the quality of your foods. So that's kind of what the strategy revolves around here. So you want to be and have high quality. You need to start being and acting in the space of high quality. Yeah, okay. I just gave you guys a nervous smile. All right. We're gonna talk about food allergies. Food allergies are fun. All right. So a food allergy, or just an allergy response, is when your body mounts an immune response to a specific protein antigen. Food allergies can come and go, and the interesting thing is that they are exacerbated by the stress response. So food allergies can also present as just about any symptom you can possibly imagine, which is a really interesting dimension to work in. And it's also a doorway to body wisdom and self-care. So the main food allergies are wheat, corn, soy, dairy, eggs, and citrus to a lesser extent. Another thing that people maybe not have allergies, because you can have an allergy to proteins, not to sugars, but sensitivities and digestive shutdown, is to what we're calling FODMAPs. A FODMAP is where fructose, lactose, fructans, galactans, and polyols. So what's really interesting is in these guys, there are types of sugars present in wheat, they're present in dairy, they're present in your pitted fruits like coconuts and avocados and plums and peaches. I know personally I'm very sensitive to beyond a certain amount of avocados. My system is wrecked. So what's just so that, yeah, there we go. That's for your awareness. And then food allergy challenges in general really call us into soul growth, right? Because this is another example of life saying, food allergy, choose. And a lot of the times we want to resist because we don't want this allergy. Oh my gosh, like that's going to change everything about the way I buy my food, the things that I can eat, the things that I enjoy that I, will have unwanted symptoms if I do eat. It's a call into growth. And so how are you going to choose? Are you going to resist and let it persist? Or are you going to choose your food allergy and start acting from a place of empowerment and full responsibility for your body and your wellness? So that's pretty cool. So unlike a lab test that tests for, specific antibodies present at a specific time period, the elimination diet is actually the most effective test for food allergies. And it's recommended that you do an elimination diet for more than 2 weeks, and then you reintroduce foods, and then just be aware with your body of what's happening. The only thing is that you only want to do an elimination diet after you've eliminated chronic stress, because like we said before, chronic stress will exacerbate the effect of food sensitivities and food allergies within the body. Chronic stress has led to something called leaky gut syndrome, where your gut is so broken down because of the die-off of bacteria, because of like the physical damage of foods and not present, that you actually have break intestinal lining. And then when food gets through that intestinal lining, your body immediately says foreign, mounts an immune response to it. And now you've developed an allergy to whatever it may be that happened to cross your intestinal lining. So eliminating chronic stress is like one of the best things that you can do to lay a solid foundation for working with food allergies. All right. Let's go ahead and talk about our final distinction, which is the use of powerful substances. And these are defined as alcohol, caffeine, sugar, and medications. And like I said before, right, nothing is inherently good or bad, it just is. With powerful substances, we really, really need to bring respect to these. And also remember that the dose makes the poison. So when we respect and use these wisely, you know, it may not have any unwanted symptoms within our bodies. But, you know, to extreme uses or abused, they can most certainly, and they usually quickly have very unwanted effects in our bodies. One other thing that we're fighting with powerful substances is the fact that our culture promotes unawareness around these and their side effects, right? Like, it's sexy to be tired and busy because you must be important. It's cool or fun to drink yourself into silliness. That's a cultural belief that we can collectively let go, because it's really not making everyone around us the best version of themselves when we are encouraged to abuse these powerful substances. So the strategy here, I hope that it's clear that there's absolutely no judgment, that I'm not saying that anyone who has addictions to these or has unwanted symptoms around these, like, that you are not a bad person. Like, I want to make that extremely clear. But if you have an unwanted symptom here, I would really invite for you to practice gentleness with yourself. Like, especially as a mother, or maybe a soon-to-be mother. Like, when your baby learned to walk, or when your baby's going to learn to walk, like, you wouldn't just beat them down when they messed up. Like, no, you would encourage them, and you would say, oh my goodness, you're so close, try again. You would hold their hand, you would help them. There's an element of gentleness there, and you have that within you. And it's that compassion and that gentleness that when we apply it to ourselves, we're really evolved. And I want that so badly for you, to be, you know, the best version of you. So, all right, that is about it for our mind-body nutrition distinctions. And so let's go ahead and jump into archetypes. This one is just super duper cool. And it's one of those things that it's always there, but you never really know until it's called out. So we're going to talk about two archetypes that are very specific to pregnant and postpartum women. And the first one is this masculine-feminine distinction. So an archetype is a timeless energy of human existence, you know, as far as like the big words are concerned. All that to say is that these are energies that they cross generations. Like, we all experience these. They cross cultures too. So with masculine and feminine, the fitness and nutrition domains are heavily dominated by masculine energy, and masculine energy comes from the left brain. So this is the part of the brain that's extremely direct, it's scientific. You know, the story of being alive is the sum of materials and processes. It's a place where everything's a machine and everything's a part of a machine, and that's it. And we lose the greater essence, and we lose the synergy, and we lose the magic and the soul, because that's really sitting in the feminine. So with this domination of masculine energy and fitness and nutrition, we end up obsessing over numbers. We obsess over calories, macronutrient profiles, percent body fats, run times, lift totals. We are completely numbered. And then not only that, but we make those numbers mean something. So I have a bad time if it's this. I have a good time if it's this. I am a bad person for eating this many calories. I'm a good person for eating this many calories. You know, it just goes on and on. And the objectiveness of it is what lends itself to quick judgment. So let's talk about the feminine. So pregnancy and postpartum in general, biologically and spiritually, calls us back to the feminine. And especially for this community where we prioritize fitness in our birth experience, this ends up being a big one for the women that I talk to, and also for myself, because I would call myself, more on the masculine side of as a woman. But pregnancy and postpartum, like, it just didn't, that option like wasn't even there. Like, I had to sit much further along the spectrum towards feminine than I was ever comfortable with in my previous years of living. But with the feminine energy, this is your right brain. This is your creative and emotional, you're unpredictable, you're pleasurable, you're nourishing. This is really what, the content of eating psychology is centered around, because it's that balance to everything that's already out there that's the masculine. So with the feminine and the masculine and the pregnant and postpartum woman, so when you are dominated by the masculine energy, if you are really resisting the call back towards center or the call back towards the feminine, there's a few issues that present. First is living in the mind and not the body, right? Because the mind is the analytical part. The mind can work with numbers. The mind has to make logical sense about everything. And the body is where the emotions happen. And the body is where the wisdom happens. And the body is where the feminine happens. And for a pregnant and postpartum woman, embodiment and grounding are so important. Because first of all, you're forced into your body, whether you like it or not. So let's go back to the car analogy. Pregnancy is like getting handcuffed to the steering wheel of that car, and that car being your body. So like you are attached to your body in a way that you weren't before. And you could, and that car's rolling too, because it's changing. So you're handcuffed to the steering wheel, the car is rolling. And if you are fighting embodiment, it's going to be a very uncomfortable 9 months. But if you get in it, and if you actually like relax and enjoy it, the handcuffs virtually fall off and you enjoy the ride. So, so the way pregnancy forces embodiment is that, number one, you're heavier. Every woman will gain, 20 to 35 pounds or whatever it is. So you are more weighted to the earth, and that's grounding. Your baby is kicking and reminding you that you have a body. So when I go into my head, and then I'm pregnant right now. So when I go into my head and I'm like all, airy fairy everywhere, and then the baby starts kicking, I immediately come back into my body and I'm present with the kicks. So he or she is kicking right now, actually. They like that. All right. And then finally, where are we at? Your senses are heightened. So this is a really cool thing about pregnancy too, is that we haven't really talked about specifically what's happening in your body during pregnancy, but you have superpowers. I don't know if you know that. Everything about you is optimized. Your blood flow, circulation, your metabolism, absolutely everything about you is optimized. Your immune system to help create this child within you, and including your senses. So like a lot of women will have like a very heightened sense of smell. They'll have heightened sense of hearing. They will end up having like a reduced pain tolerance. So like your senses are shifting, and that's noticeable, and that will call attention back to your body. So for the pregnant woman who lives in her head, pregnancy can be a really scary time for her. I know for my first pregnancy, I was terrified. I absolutely hated being in my body, and it took me a really long time to get comfortable in it. And then once I did, it was fantastic. So for the woman who does practice embodiment on a regular basis, like this can be really powerful. This can be a really, really pleasurable time for her. Okay. The other issue is with the masculine energy, this woman can still be on the quest for the perfect diet and the perfect body. And the news here is that your body is going to change during pregnancy, and that's a fact. So a changing body that, when you have habits that lend themselves towards perfection and lend themselves towards looking a certain way, and all of a sudden those habits, while not changing, don't have the same result, that's really terrifying. And that was me during my first pregnancy as well. So this basically was me during my first pregnancy. Let's just go ahead and leave that on the table. All right. So when you are on the quest for the perfect diet and the perfect body, you attempt to use your willpower to dominate your pregnant urges, and you're committed to staying the course at all costs, right? Which can be very damaging, not just to you, but to your baby as well. This issue also calls a woman into ignoring her own body wisdom because she's in her head. And body wisdom, if you're, a veteran mom, you know that is like so super important during labor and delivery, because your body will take over, totally take over. And then it also, cravings will call attention back to your body, and for good reason, right? Because sometimes a craving is seen as an unwanted symptom, but this is the divine message. This is your body saying more iron, more physical touch, more carbohydrates, more protein, more sleep. There's a need there, and your body will do its best to promote balance the way it does, homeostasis. And then finally, just the idea that you're inherently broken and need fixed. Fixing is so masculine. Pretty much, like, I know my husband, if I bring him absolutely any type of, conversation or news, he's only listening for how he can fix it. Unless I preempt the conversation by, I just need you to listen, not fix my problem. But the idea that you as a person, especially you as a pregnant woman, are broken and you need fixed is just so completely false. And it's so disempowering. And like I said before, pregnancy is not a disability. Pregnancy is a superpower. And I really hope that this conversation opens up that possibility for you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into our final archetype, which is called Princess, Queen in Training, and Queen. This one rocked my world when I learned about it. So a princess is, or just this archetype in general, this is what we call the natural maturation process for a woman. Every woman will mature into each of these archetypes. As you can see by the age categories, 0 to 30 is your princess, 30 to 40 is your queen in training, 40 plus is your queen. We'll discuss what each of these mean in just a second, but just notice, become aware that most women of childbearing age are princesses, and this makes a difference, especially when we come to postpartum. All right, so a princess is a young girl, young woman who cannot be asked to be all-seeing and all-knowing. She needs encouragement, she needs affirmation, she needs to feel pretty, she needs to feel safe and secure, she needs to feel protected. And there is absolutely nothing wrong or right about any of these archetypes. But what we find is that for a woman who's stuck in one archetype when her maturation process indicates that she could be in another, we end up having issues. So this is the time for princesses to be the damsel in distress and to be taken care of. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The queen in training is your women between ages 30 and 40. And so for a queen in training, she needs less affirmation. She practices gratitude from a really genuine place. And the negative self-talk loses its zing. So she becomes more aware of her automatic stories, because we as humans make stories about everything, and we always will. She becomes more present to that fact, and therefore can start teasing them apart. Like, this story is actually serving my vitality, this story is not, and I can let that one go. For the queen, I'm sure all of you can think of a queen in your life, or at least a number of them. So these are the women who serve their queendom. They celebrate life. They're fully alive. They do not rob themselves and others of their power. They get their body, they are and what they have, and they're not limited by society's rules around what it means to be a woman. They don't give a whole lot of shits about it, and it's awesome. They're like fully alive and empowered. So the interesting thing about our society, just kind of like we have these little nuances with moralizing and having, what was I going to say? Oh, the powerful substances, like our culture, we have collective behaviors and beliefs around certain things. And one thing that our culture absolutely loves is a princess. We love all our princesses. You can see this in Hollywood because we have pretty much pick a man of any age and he's going to have a woman co-star, probably like 15 to 30 even years younger than him, because we love our princesses. So society wants all women to be princesses. We get this message everywhere. And not only that, but we as women are taught that princesses are loved, only princesses are loved, and we're encouraged to stay. And for the maturation process, for advancing and maturing into the queen in training and maturing into your full queen and being fully empowered, like that's so stifling, and it's robbing you of your life. So one of the mindset challenges I really see with princesses, in general, because we're talking about just, okay, so now we're like leaving the realm of, you know, being in your wrong archetype. So when we have women who are like 40 years old and they're archetypally, you know, so it would serve them best to be working with queen in training, working with their queen, and we see them stuck in princess, it's sad. It really is. Like I see some women who are in their 50s and they're worried about the last 5 pounds. And they've always been worried about the last 5 pounds. And it's like, you can serve your queendom in such a way, and you can be such a role model and celebrate and just be fully empowered, and you're keeping yourself small for 5 pounds, you know, and that's, there's a better future for that. Okay. And so finally, let's go ahead and talk about, for women of childbearing age, and being a princess, and what that means for postpartum especially, is that there's this sense of urgency to get your body back, and to feel hot and affirmed. And because you don't have your bump anymore, you don't have an excuse. So we like to, you know, rally up all of our perfectionism and rally up all of our strategies to get back, right? And what I would love to offer is that there's no going back, there's going forward. And there's going forward from princess, and there's going forward into your queen in training. And for a postpartum woman who can start trying on this queen in training mindset, whether you're a 23-year-old or, you know, whether you're, you know, a 33-year-old, you can try on all of these archetypes anytime you want. But typically, this is the natural process of things. So what, yeah, I guess just what I would just love to invite for you, the strategy is, you know, practice gratitude for your body. That's a great start. Practice looking at your child and just being aware of your love and applying that, and just knowing that that love is within you. It's unconditional, because you would do anything for your child. And with that love, apply it to yourself and see how you evolve. So come from that place of being that queen in training, being that fully alive woman and fully empowered woman, and watch the results that it has. Because when you live into the possibility of being fully alive and fully empowered as a mother and as a wife or whatever, you don't even have to be married, right? You will start having the results that you're living into. So with that, I'll go ahead and go back to the question bar. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to shoot them my way. Let's go. I think we got one more like overview. Bam, there it is. Okay. So if you've got questions, please go ahead and ask questions. If not, not a problem. I hope you, if you're watching this after the fact, after the live event ends, or if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me or check me out on Instagram or text message or however you want to get in contact. Maybe just comment and I'll start checking the comments under this video. That'd be fabulous too. So I just truly, like, I hope that the commitment that I established at the beginning of this webinar came across to you. It was fully conveyed, because truly it came from a place of wanting you to become present with yourself in the relationship with food in such a way that it transforms you and transforms the relationship that you have. So again, anything you need at all, I'm here to help. So again, this is Melissa Hemphill from BIRTHFIT Florida, and you can email me at melissa.a.hemphill@gmail.com, or find me on Facebook or Instagram. Instagram handle is @melissahemphill, and my website is birthfitflorida.com. I absolutely love sharing with you. Thank you for sticking with my stuttering and awkward silences. I really appreciate it. Have a fabulous evening, and I love you all.